We're at the Roundnet Screen Printing Academy. We're going to be showing a demonstration in front of a live class printing standard Plastisol inks with the white underbase, and we're going to show how they look without that white underbase on a black garment. Then we're going to show the RyOpaque Opaque series of inks, which are a little bit thicker, but they're really creamy and easy to work with. So Mark, I'll have you take over and explain what you're doing right now.
Okay, the way the standard print would be, we would support all the layers that go on top of it with a white. In this case, it would be a white on a 110 mesh screen, and we're going to lay a layer of that on here, and then we're going to flash, and then we're going to put the colors over the top, flashing in between each color, and that will build up our little star here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to use the other inks and see how much, what the difference will be. So I'm going to pre-flood my screen essentially and just lay it on there.
As Mark's printing, let me explain, these stencils are built a little thicker than normal stencils, meaning that they have 2 coats of emulsion on it instead of just 1 in 1 coat. That's going to give us a little bit thicker well and a thicker ink deposit as far as our print goes. So if you're working with an opaque ink or even a white opaque ink and want to get more ink down at once, building a thicker stencil is going to enable you to do so.
And now what we're going to do is I'm just going to check it real quick to see if it's dry, and it is dry. It's not cured, it's just gelled. Now the next layer I'm going to put another finished white over the top of it to make it nice and bright white. We're going to reduce we're going to increase our angle and lay less of the white down because now we're printing on plastic and not on the garment. And another quick flash. That's going to provide us with a real nice white. And I'm just going to carefully touch it. We're going to let it cool for a little bit before we put these down.
The reason most inks need an underbase is because they're all meant to build on a white background. So without a white background, a standard pigment loaded ink does not have enough opacity in it to show up directly on a dark garment, as you'll see after we demonstrate.
Now in the second layer, we're going to go ahead, we're just going to print a nice thin layer over the top of it with a nice, about 75, 80 degree angle here. That's what we got. And we're going to do a real quick flash on this. Normally if we were doing this, we'd be loaded up with this. We'd go white, we'd do a round of white, then we'd do a round of another white, and then red flash, and then another one of blue over the top. So we're having to wait in between for this to cool down because it's carrying the heat. If we waited too long, the heat could travel up and actually prematurely dry these inks, and it'll cause you a lot of problems to stop and clean your screens out. So again, it's the same kind of pass, it's pretty straight up. We're using the blade of our squeegee. We'll have to lay a lot on there. It's a little bit out, but it still tells the story.
So now let's show printing those inks directly on that black garment. Well, what a lot of printers do when they're starting out, instead of creating a white underbase, that means 2 screens, they try to do the same thing by printing, flashing, and printing with the color ink. So Mark will quickly demonstrate printing a standard Plastisol ink without the white underbase and how it looks on that dark garment.
It's not as pronounced right there, and there's no white support layer underneath it. So we'll go ahead and we'll flash that one off. We'll put the blue right next to it. Quite as bright.
All right, Mark, while you clean those screens out, Nick, why don't you come over here and let us show the consistency differences between the inks. So this is our standard blue Plastisol right here. As you can see, standard, this is royal blue, international coatings ink, and this is the opaque series of ink. So this one has a little bit more body to it, but yet it's still got some creaminess to it that will show up on a dark garment. So with some opaque inks, they're super, super thick. They have a lot of body in it, which means that it's really hard to pass through a screen, even a low mesh screen. Same thing with the red over here. That's the RyOpaque red. This is the standard Plastisol red. So the standard red is going to be a lot thinner, have less body in it. The RyOpaque inks were developed by International Coatings. They're basically kind of a hybrid between a standard ink with some more opacity white in them. That's why they're a little brighter than standard colors. They're basically formulated the same way the Roundnet white's formulated, so easy to work with, but shows up great on the garment.
Now that we know that we're not going to have an underbase under this, what I would do is probably raise your off contact just a little bit more. And we're going to probably do a nice flood stroke. I've already pre-flooded it. And the angle of my squeegee is going to be a little bit down about 30 degrees. You can already see that it's much brighter than the other ones. I should darken up just slightly more because it's going to be subjected to the heat.
So if that's one pass, let's look at that with a print flash print. Give people the idea of what it looks print flash print without a white underbase though. So
nice and bright.
Yeah, pretty bright ink, especially without a white underbase underneath it.
So we want to let it cool down a little bit. If it's too hot, what will happen is a lot of people will start to print not realizing it's hot. Well, it's hot and sticky. They'll come down and print. They'll actually pull the shirt off, and it'll just ruin the whole thing. So you'll have to start over again. So that's the nice thing about the Riley Hopkins. You got 4 stations for it to cool down. It's usually you'll have flash either directly left or directly right. And you have enough time for it to cool down before you go on to your secondary color. So again, I'm going to go ahead and flood this. And the same kind of a pass. I just want to get a nice, real low pass on this. And that looks pretty good just by itself there. Yeah. I mean, I don't really think I would want to go any further than that. I mean, if you can minimize the amount of times going around in circles, the better off you're going to be. You could put a final one on there if you wanted to, but it looks pretty darn good for what it is. I mean, it holds up very well without having a wide underbase at all.
We have the standard style, which is print with a white underbase, flash, and then colors of standard blue and red over it. We have what some printers try to do, just sneak without white underbase with standard Plastisol ink. You see the ink is very faded out. And then we have the RyOpaque without a white underbase. So out of the 3 examples, these are fairly close. This one might be a little bit brighter with that white underbase. However, this one looks fairly good. As far as the hand and the feel to them, they all feel about the same. They're all Plastisol print. In fact, the opaque, rounded opaque inks actually feel a little bit smoother than the standard Plastisol inks without that underbase. Let's have a class customer print one and kind of instruct the printing process on that, Mark.
All right. So basically, you saw how I did that.
You want to print it with an underlay?
No underlay, just flood it, and then maybe 2 times at that angle. You saw how I did. And we'll see what happens. I'll correct you as you go if I have to. There you go, good. And then just let her fall down. One more time. Perfect. Nice. Then go ahead and do one more red over it. And this time it'll be more of a straight up pass. Yeah, you're good now. Just a flood and a, remember to lift up your screen. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah,
Good.
good job.
Doug, you screen printed a little bit before?
A little bit.
How did you like printing with the RyOpaque inks for the first time?
Loved it.
So, compared to a normal Plastisol ink, would you say it's just very similar, creamy, easy to work with?
Easier to work with, more ergonomically friendly.
Okay. Well, thank you. Good job.
Thanks.
Cool. That's showing the RyOpaque inks in action. Visit silkscreening supplies.com to pick up RyOpaque inks today.